Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of our Dungeon World Wednesdays, episode 1. As you can see, Groove Shark. We were just enjoying some Besaid Island during the intermission. I do highly recommend you listen to that song if you have not heard it before. Alright, as you can see, we have another player here, a 6th player. She was here earlier, and we were intending on her playing, but for whatever reason, we were having an issue of Roll20. So we took an intermission, we got that figured out, and, well, why don't you introduce yourself?
So, my real name is Carrie, but during the campaign, my character will be called Tzarra, and she is an elven bard. You might have heard me before. I've very rarely been Moomin's player 2 on certain streams, and back in the day, I used to stream Pokemon Yellow and Grand Theft Auto. But now I'm just a college student, and I've been with these guys for like ever. Ever, ever, ever.
Okay, so the interesting thing about what Carrie's going to do for us is that she's going to go ahead and make a character from the beginning. So we're going to go ahead and give you guys the rundown of how character creation works in Dungeon World. This will give us a little more of an idea of just how the system works, right? And then we'll be able to begin our journey. So you can see here a lot of the statistics seem very, very similar to Dungeons and Dragons, especially the 6 primary stats being Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. There are also 3 other stats, which are Damage, Armor, and Health. There's an alignment system. The alignment is based on 5 alignments. It's Good, which tends to be sacrificial, Lawful, which tends to be restrictive, Neutral, which seems to be a little more loosey-goosey, Chaotic, which involves doing behaviors that are reckless, obviously, and finally Evil, which involves causing pain unto others for your own benefit. The significance behind alignment in this game is that you gain experience at the end of the session if you fulfilled your alignment requirement. The other ways to gain experience are to fulfill a bond, which you'll see we'll be filling these out. These are the starting bonds for the characters. A bond is sort of like a relationship that you have with another player, and if at the end of the session the relationship has changed, that's very important, right? So if it says, like, I trust so-and-so, you don't gain an experience point for trusting so-and-so. You gain an experience point when they've done something that causes you to stop trusting them, for instance. For whatever reason, if it changes, that is when you'll gain an experience. And, of course, you'll have to change the bond because it has changed. Also, every time you fail a die roll in the game, that is how you gain experience. If you defeat the monster perfectly and you're awesome, you don't get experience. That was too easy for you. There was no challenge. Why reward you? That's the way that the game sees. That's the way that the game treats experience. Is when you fail, it sucks. You take damage. Something terrible happens. The elven bar wench that you were hitting on smacks you, and everyone laughs at you in the bar, but you gain an experience point. Progress. That is the very defining feature about this role-playing system.
I think there's a life metaphor in there somewhere.
There could be. Anyway, ignore everything else that's not Dungeon World in this Dropbox. I'm going to be pulling up the book here in order to show you guys. We'll go ahead and pull up the book so that we can run through the character creation process together. So, as we come through here, alright, so it's like a 10 or so step process to making a character. In this case, Carrie has already selected a class that she wants to play, which is the Bard. She has also selected a race, which the interesting thing about races in this game is, other than just, flavor and, of course, the fiction and what your character looks like, It gives you a unique power. For instance, the Elven Bard, when you enter an important location, which you decide if it's an important location, you can ask the GM for one fact from the history of that location. So the moment we arrive at a place that seems significant, and she finds it significant, she'll be able to say, "Hey, GM, I want to know something about the history of this place," so that we can use that to our advantage. Neat little things like that. So that's what she gets for being an elf. Next, she needs to choose a name, which she's chosen Tzarra. So we are all set on that. Finally, a look. So we need her to select her looks. If we go to the Bard section, you can see here that the Bard gets a certain selection of looks. Each class has 4 different categories of looks, and they have 3 choices generally. There's a couple that are only 2 choices, but in general, you get 3 different choices. So, so there's her selection. So she's going to be cutting out the ones that doesn't suit her. She's decided that she wants fiery eyes. She's an elf with fiery eyes and fancy hair. She sounds very sultry. She will also have a fit body, showing that she is active as she travels the road. This wandering elven bard. Now, what clothing does she wear? Traveling clothes. Very practical. For a second, I thought she was going to be like this seductive, temptress, elven bard with poor clothing. She's a hobo.
Actually, wait, I like that idea.
You do? Yeah? You're like this very attractive elven bard that's all fit.
Besides, now it's all Fs, and that's what you'll see when you see my character.
You've chosen for finery, so you want fancy clothing, you want to be very extravagant. You're like a noble woman traveling the road. What is a noble elven woman doing traveling the road? What's to say? Alright. So, that's easy enough. As you can see, there's a couple of stats that are automatically derived, like her damage die is d6. Her max HP is going to be 6 plus her constitution score. Let's see. Pretty close. That was close. So next you choose your stats. Now, in Dungeon World, to keep things balanced, we don't roll dice to get our stats, right? You know, I personally have never been a huge fan of rolling dice to get stats. You know, the whole, like, 4d6, keep 3, right? You know, it's too random, and you can wind up with really skewed stats. So when you come through here, you can see that you get to choose 6 stats, and they're always those numbers, right? 16, 15, 13, 12, 9, and 8. The 16 is a +2 modifier, 15 and 13 are a +1 modifier, 12 and 9 are a 0 modifier, and finally 8 is a -1 modifier, meaning you are really, really bad at that. The modifiers apply to your 2d6 roll. The most you need to succeed on any die roll is a 7. So if you have +2, you have a pretty good chance of never failing a roll. You know, certainly more than a 50% chance of not failing a roll with that. Now, ideally, you want a 10 or higher. A 10 or higher means that you succeed exceptionally. It means you've done an amazing roll. A 7 and 9 means you've passed, but there's some complications. And then, of course, a 6 or lower means that you failed, which means you gained experience. But you also, some bad stuff happens. So she will be selecting her stats. Naturally, as a bard, charisma is probably your biggest stat. It's used for a lot of abilities and such. From there, you can kind of go with anything. Really, it's just about how you want to define your character and set them apart from the rest of the party.
To give a quick overview, good.
What's the difference between intelligence and wisdom?
Intelligence is knowledge. That is like whether you know if that monster is like if you look at a monster and you're like, what is that? Is that an elemental? Is it an aberration? Is it from another planet? What's that magic spell? Is it a fireball or is it like explosive rocks or something? Right? That's like intelligence, right? It's your knowledge. It's knowing things. Wisdom, on the contrary, is your wits. It's your awareness. It's your perception of your surroundings.
For instance, Pierre has a lot of arcane knowledge about spells, but he isn't particularly perceptive. In fact, one time he stumbled into a camp because he had to go off in the woods to pee.
Yeah, he's pretty dense.
Yes.
So he has a high intelligence, but a low wisdom.
So you've opted to have wisdom as your highest stat, which is interesting.
Also, quick overview of the other stats. Strength is mainly used as a hack and slash when you attack someone.
It's also used for any feats of strength, of course. You know, jumping, climbing, anything that requires you to use your muscles, right?
That's why my dwarf has mad ups.
Yes, his dwarf has mad ups, right? It's them gains. Dexterity is your hand-eye coordination. It's your flexibility. It is your acrobatics. It is anything that has to do with finesse. It is finesse.
Very useful when dodging.
Of course, of course. Constitution is your overall health, your ability to resist poisons, disease. It affects your maximum HP. All in all, a person with a high constitution is a very tough individual. They're a person who most likely has a high threshold of pain and damage. And of course, charisma is the attractiveness, the social attractiveness. You can be, you can not look so great, but if you have that charisma, you can carry yourself and be a very attractive individual using your social prowess. A person with a higher charisma has much more social prowess than someone with a lower charisma.
Useful for when going around town.
Yes, certainly. Yes. Whenever you want to schmooze over a merchant and save some money on that longsword, that's when charisma will come in handy. And of course, trying to seduce the elven bar wench.
But then you won't get experience.
It's true, it's true. You will not gain experience.
But you will get lucky with that elven barwinch, maybe.
As long as she doesn't have anything, then it's unlucky.
That's what the high con is for.
Alright. So she has selected her stats. She sets her maximum HP, which is her constitution plus 6, I believe. So in this case, her health will be 18. Her damage die is a d6. She'll also select her starting moves, which she already has, as you can see. She has the Arcane Art, which allows her to basically play a song and add an effect. When she rolls, she has the opportunity of drawing unwanted attention. Naturally, she's singing, and her party gets buffed or healed, and they're like, hey, that person singing over there is making them powerful. Let's go punch her in the face, right? So there's that. It has multiple effects. She can add damage to someone, she can heal someone, she can clear an enchantment from someone's head, and of course she can assist them with a roll, an aid roll of sorts. She also has Bardic Lore, which she must select one area of expertise. As you can see, there's a wide variety of things that she can have Bardic Lore of, which whenever she first encounters something that her Bardic Lore covers, I get to give her some information which I have to answer truthfully. I have to give legitimate information because she's heard a lot about these different subjects. So once she has selected, all right, so she's decided Legends of Hero Past is her bardic lore, it seems. So whenever something happens where this is a tale of heroes from the past, she will know it, and I must answer. She can ask one question, that is. She can ask a question, I have to answer it truthfully. So she doesn't know necessarily everything about, for instance, Wrath the Fortress, just because we've mentioned his name previously. But she would know, she'd be able to ask a question, I would have to answer it. And of course, she has Charming and Open, which whenever she speaks frankly with someone, she can ask the player a question from the list, and they have to answer it truthfully. However, that means that they get to ask a question back. So if she asks a question, one of these 5, they have to answer it. No lies, no tricks. And then they get to ask her something back in order to learn about her. And finally, we have a Port in the Storm, where basically whenever we come back to a civilized settlement that they visited, I have to explain to her what has changed, what has become altered ever since their last visit. Also, you'll see my flux is turning on. Let me go ahead and disable that for the last hour that we'll be streaming, so that it doesn't, mess with the lighting and whatnot. Sorry about that, guys. Disable for an hour. There we are. No more flux. Alright. So those are her starting moves. Next, she chooses an alignment. The Bard, alright, we're on page 27. I'm just going to remember that. I just want to show you guys the different choices that the Bard gets. So the Bard, they can choose to be good, which means they will gain an experience point at the end of the session if they perform an art to aid someone. Neutral means that they must avoid conflict or diffuse a tense situation. If she can do that, then she'll gain an experience point at the end. Otherwise, she can be chaotic, which means to spur others into significant and unplanned decisive action. That, as you can see, could be extremely dangerous, given the right circumstances. So, she chooses one of those 3, and that becomes her alignment, until she can make any significant change that will, for whatever reason, alter her alignment. Let's say she becomes evil, or she starts off good, but starts becoming much more chaotic as she gambles people's lives away. Alright, so she has selected good, which means to perform an art to aid someone else. So when she goes out of her way to help someone, she'll gain an experience. Okay, back to page 27. She has to choose her gear. So I should have remembered the Bard page. Alright, so here you can see each character, when you're making a character, you get a set load, which here it's 9 plus STR, which means their strength modifier. In this case, it's -1. So she actually only has a total load of 8. She starts off with Dungeon Rations, which just about everyone does, which weighs 1 and it has 5 uses. Dungeon Rations are food that you are required to eat each day, otherwise you start starving, and that's not a good thing. Now the Bard, of course, what would be a Bard if they didn't get to choose an instrument? Now, the instruments are 0 weight, so they don't burden her at all. So she gets to choose an instrument that is her character, that fits her character. So, it appears she has chosen the Songbook in a Forgotten Tongue, so she will be a singing Bard. She'll be a Bard that sings songs. She also gets to select which clothing she'd like. It appears that she is deciding between wearing armor or wearing ostentatious clothing. The clothing would just mean that she doesn't have armor, and it would just emphasize the fact that she's wearing fancy clothes. But of course, she could be wearing fancy armor. But she has decided that with the struggle of having a lower weight capacity, that she finds it more appropriate to just have super fancy clothes. Next, she will choose a weapon. She has a choice between a dueling rapier, which is all about using your dexterity, because you are it's a finesse-oriented stabbing sword. So in this case, it doesn't hurt her if she takes that over the bow because she is using her dexterity for the dueling rapier. On the other hand, she could take the worn bow and a short sword. The short sword wouldn't have the same advantage. She'd be weaker with the short sword with the rapier, but she'd have a range option as she'd have the worn bow. And she's chosen the dueling rapier, as that allows her to attack as much as she wants in melee without consequence, thanks to the precise tag. And then she chooses one last piece of equipment. The adventure gear is interesting. It comes with, this, I believe, 5 uses, and basically it's anything that you could find in like a dungeoning kit that you could possibly think of. You pull it out. So it's like, oh, we need rope. Hey, look what's in my dungeon bag, rope. Hey, we need caltrops. Look what I found. I found some caltrops, guys. I could really go for a beer. Beer? You know, stuff like that. It's just a cute little, you know, it's nothing, like you can't pull out a +3 greatsword of slaying all of the enemies that the GM puts up against you for the rest of the session. That's not cool. But anything that you just find, like, that you think, like, imagine, like, you know how you have like a messy section of your room and like you start cleaning up and you're like, wow, I didn't even know I had that in here. Like that's pretty much, that's how your adventuring gear happens. You just went like, this could come in handy on an adventure, and then you just threw it into a knapsack, and eventually you just go rummaging through it and you're like, wow, I didn't even know I had that. How convenient. There's also bandages. Bandages are a good healing. They come with 3 uses. They heal for only 4 hit points, but there's no consequence to using them. See, when you use healing magic outside of combat, there is the chance that casting your magic will draw ire from an enemy that you didn't even know was there. That's the wonder of this game. You're never safe. The bandages are something you can sit down, you can apply them. There's no roll needed. Anyone can apply a bandage. And it heals for 4 hit points. It's 0 weight. There's also the halfling pipe leaf, which does absolutely nothing for you, but you get to be high.
I thought, like, if you shared it with
Oh,
someone, it gives you +1 to parlay.
That's true. You can sit down with someone, and if you're trying to do a parlay, which involves, like, negotiating, so if you're trying to negotiate a deal with someone, and you sit down, you both smoke the halfling pipe leaf, it's like a peace pipe, right? You know, you, like, get to do better at negotiating. Thank you for clarifying that. Or you could get 3 coins, which is the worst option. I mean, 3 coins, I'm pretty sure doesn't buy either of those 3 things, right? So even if you got one of those 3 things and then tried to like trade it or pawn it off or something like that, you could probably still make more than 3 coins. But maybe you just really want 3 coins to do coin tricks or something. I don't know. But either way, it looks like she's deciding between the adventuring gear and the halfling pipe leaf. I would be caught between those 2 as well. The bandages are okay, but, you know, we have plenty of healing options in the party. But man,
I started with 2 healing potions.
Pipe leaf or adventuring gear? Do I want a knapsack that just has
So-
random stuff in it, or do I want to get high?
What if there was a halfling pipe leaf in the adventuring gear?
There can't be. Like the halfling pipe leaf is a very specific thing. Like that's not something you just like throw away into an adventuring gear thing. So adventuring gear is strictly like rope.
Things that aren't really in.
Yeah, things
like,
that
named
it's the
things that you can
catch-all
buy.
that you don't like. If you can't see it in the store, then it might be an adventuring kit. So she's chosen the halfling pipe leaf. Excellent. And it looks like now you introduce your character. So let's see. Now that you know who your character is, it's time to introduce them to everyone else. You can share your alignment now or keep it secret. We already know. This is also the time for the GM to ask questions. So I ask questions like, you know, have you been on an adventure before? Where are you from? Yeah, let's go ahead. So your character, are they new to adventuring? Are they an experienced adventurer? Have they been wandering for some time?
I don't think they've been wandering for a very long time, but she definitely isn't new. She tends to find a spot, and she'll be there for a little while until she's done with it.
Okay, so it sounds like she's
So,
a traveling performer, so she's used to hitting the road. So in that case, where is she from? We do have two established societies of elves. To the west, we have the former slaves, which have created their own sort of elven tribe in the wake of at the end of the last Dragon War. They've been liberated from their slavery, and they have been given their own ancestral homes. Other than that, to the far east, we know that there is an empire where elves are present, and it is an empire that is known to be oppressive. But nonetheless, you can choose where your elf comes from. They don't have to come from either of those. We even know that there's some elves that have been scattered on small islands to the south. Perhaps she's from one of those.
my elf has been scattered on the small islands.
Okay, so she comes from the south, from a small island, but she's decided to come to the mainland to share her arts.
Yes.
All right. I think that'll be. I think we have a decent idea of like what we're working with. So what does your character think of all of this rampant chaos that has happened? All of this, all of these lands that have been destroyed by the bandits and whatnot.
Well, it's definitely not very nice, but they haven't come to hurt her yet.
Does she travel dangerously close to them because she's curious, or has she just sort of happened into the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time, perhaps?
Definitely the wrong neighborhood. She has a tendency to read maps wrong.
Excellent. So we know that she struggles with this local area, but she has a high wisdom. So I suppose when she gets comfortable, she's very comfortable and aware of her surroundings. All right. Let's see. We'll go ahead and we'll hold off on the bonds for right now. It looks like we have a little bit of time left. So now that we have introduced, let's go ahead and let's see. There we go. That's what we wanted. Yes, I think we're done with the Dungeon World book for right this moment. And we need to find, I think I have the perfect sprite for your character. There we are, yes. And we will edit on, long ears later, but this is the character that I thought of when I thought really fancy. So I'm going to show you guys how I sprite real quick. You just take these sprite sheets, and I don't know how that happened. We just zoom down. Let's go ahead and use this one. This one seems appropriate. So select, we invert the selection, we crop down to it. There we go. It's a decent frame there. It's Sana, right? Or is it Tzarra?
Tzarra.
Tzarra, and that's Tzarra?
Yes.
Okay. All right. It wants to. There we go. And we are using Roll20 here, so let's see. We add a character named Tzarra. Carrie will have control, and we add an avatar. Ta-da! And of course, we'll be editing those avatars later. So, Carrie, if you'd be after you brought up your status window. Make sure you've got this down. There you are. Ta-da! Okay.